With student number 30608449. To answer the question for this assignment, we first have to determine what the difference is between evaluation and assessment. Assessment and feedback are linked to each other. Feedback causes thinking to take place. Comments from the teachers are thus very much needed for the learners to be able to respond with meaningful discussion and to help the learners to achieve their goals. The Department of Basic Education prescribes the following assessments to take place in the classroom: baseline, diagnostic, formative, and summative. Baseline is, for instance, the initial class in school with grade 8 to determine what the level of the learner's current proficiency is. Diagnostic is focused on determining problems or a lack of understanding. Formative is a continuous process with guidance from the educator. And summative is to come to a conclusion about progress, for example, the end of a unit. Results must help a learner to improve learning. Evaluation, on the other hand, is a final numerical expression for a final product. My answer is thus: we must assess language in the content classroom, but not necessarily always for marks. If learners were, for instance, tested for proficiency in language the previous year, and they've proven themselves, it would not be necessary to test them again. If there's still a lack of proficiency, one can assess pronunciation, keywords, technical vocabulary, or even Concord. However, this is more for feedback to help the learners to improve themselves. My reason for this? That we have to remember to sometimes let the language count a small percentage of an assessment. Otherwise, the learners will most definitely not pay much attention to this aspect and it becomes useless. Learners do not gain anything to help them improve language bars by evaluation, especially if this should happen in the middle of the year. Evaluation is for the end of the year. Here are my examples of typical activities explaining how language can be assessed in my content classroom. Some meaningful discussion where learners can agree or disagree with one another regarding a question. For example, which chord progression should have been used next in subject music's harmony? One can then hear their pronunciation and help with this. In written form, knowledge questions can be incorporated with activities where my learners can engage with more intermediate skills. For example, where a baseline of 4 notes is given, and they must fill in the missing 3 top parts, filling in an additional space with a correct English cadence name. Analysis of another composer's score of music can be given where they can criticize, object, or even create a more suitable dynamic movement for a piece of music, filling in the English music terms of different dynamics with correct spellings. Listening activities can be given where learners can take educated guesses of which progression will follow as the music is stopped at a very critical point. They then must write down what their finding will be and state their point in English with 5 words as to why. Movement activities can even be incorporated where learners can work out dance movements on certain time signatures from selected pop songs. Yes, they then have to distinguish between which time signature is which from knowledge they had gained in class, applying this verbally and in movement in a short 2-minute assignment to demonstrate proficiency and learning.